guys, this is Rob from Guy Plays, and today on the Snapshot, we are finally building Hildryn. Now, you can pick up Hildryn's blueprints for 5,000 standing after you've reached rank 2 with Vox Solaris, but do be aware that the blueprints for the rest of her parts drop off of the Exploiter Orb fight. Now, if you don't want to deal with any of that fissure farming, you can always pick her up pre-built, along with a Warframe slot and a Catalyst for 325 plat. However, if you are rolling in all of that digital currency, definitely take a look at the Hildryn collection to see all of the extra goodies that come with that. Okay, so before we take a look at the build, let's go ahead and do a quick overview of Hildryn's abilities. Starting things off with her passive. Now, this little tiny blurb that they've got down here in no way encompasses the full breadth of Hildryn's passive. But let's go ahead and address what they've tossed on the table. So, become invulnerable for a brief moment after shields are depleted. This ability is restored when shields fully recharge. So, what they're referencing here is basically after you've lost both your overshields and your standard shielding, you'll actually get a 3-second period of invulnerability. This period is not affected by mods in any way, shape, or form. But what's going to happen during this period is your shield will have a forcible recharge. So they'll start recharging. Now, if they manage to make it all the way back up to full, you'll get another 3-second period of invulnerability if you drop back into your health. But if it does not make it all the way up to full and enemies are able to take your shields down before it goes all the way back up, any enemies that will deal damage to that will bring you all the way back down. You'll not get that invulnerability period and you'll start taking health damage. However, because Hildryn has so many abilities that forcibly restore her shields, most of the time she'll be able to restore her shields all the way back up and get another 3-second invulnerability period, which makes her very, very tanky. But this does not end here because she's got more tankiness built into her kit. She's actually got shield gating built in. Now, for those of you guys who have no clue what shield gating is, it's a really, really cool mechanic that both applies to Hildryn's overshields as well as her standard shielding. So, let's pretend you have 1 point of overshield. If an enemy is about to do 1,000,000 points of damage to you, and it's going to go ahead and knock out that 1 point of overshielding, but because you've got shield gating, it's not going to drop into your blue shields. So same thing goes for her blue shielding. If she has 1 point of blue shielding left, and an enemy does 1,000,000 points of damage to you, it's just going to knock out that blue shielding, but it won't touch your health. So you've got 2 gates of shielding that prevent leaking into the next pool. So that's definitely another thing that's going to help Hildryn with her survivability. Now, the last bit is really, really cool because it actually has to deal with Hildryn's overshields. So for those of you guys who don't know, overshields are the purple form of shielding that you'll see Hildryn be able to kind of accumulate onto herself. Now, whenever this is live, basically what happens is any damage that would bypass standard shielding or any of her shielding basically is not going to affect her. So think slash procs and toxin damage, not going to go through as long as she has overshields up. So make sure to keep yourself in the purple and you will be fine and dandy with that. Now, I'm sure that there are more things that will apply to this, but let's go ahead and move into the rest of her abilities. Now, Balefire, as you guys know, is her exalted weapon. It is moddable in the arsenal, so you'll be able to see all of the stats on that when we take a look at it. But basically what it does is it drains some of her shielding and it converts it into a high-powered rocket that will explode upon contact with an enemy or terrain, dealing damage to them. Again, it's moddable and you'll be able to see all of the stats once we get to that. And the longer you hold the charge, the more damage you'll be able to do. It does kind of cap it out, so don't worry about that. Next thing, we have shield pillage. So basically what happens is Hildryn is going to send out a wave of energy that is going to mark enemies in the path. There's a small duration that you'll actually see whenever you cast it, and as soon as that duration is up, the shield actually pulls itself back in and restores your shield as well as overshielding. It'll also remove status effects from both you and your allies. So if you do have like a pesky heat damage thing that is ticking off on you and you're like, oh my god, get rid of this, you can go ahead and cast shield pillage to get rid of that status effect. Or let's pretend you have some slash proc on you or like a little toxin cloud that's floating around that you need to get rid of ASAP because you don't have overshields. Well, this will get rid of it and also restore your shielding and hopefully your overshielding as well. And just keep in mind that shield pillage will only affect enemies that have shields or armor. This will actually drain 25% of their shields or armor. And if you're going up against infested and they don't have any of that, it's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. It only affects enemies that have one of those two forms of defenses. Moving along, we have Haven. So basically what happens is you have this aura around you that links to both allies and enemies. For allies, whenever they are linked to you, they'll actually get your passive as well. So that 3-second invulnerability period, if their shields go down, it'll also start restoring their shields. It'll give them overshield, and it'll actually give them a bonus to their shielding as well. So lots of great support tactics there that will help you out, as well as the rest of your team. And I do believe this also affects, any of the defense targets that are just roaming around. Hildryn is actually really, really great for that because she's able to follow around those annoying ass boogers and restore their shields while it's happening. Now, if your link breaks off of your allies, any shields that you've restored are fine, and any of the bonus shields that you've granted them will actually be converted into overshields until that shielding gets used up. So it's just bonuses all around when it comes to your allies. Now, when it comes to your enemies, it'll actually deal damage to them over time. Now, for kind of like lower level targets, not lower level, but you know, like more common targets, like the weaker targets and like medium powered targets, what'll end up happening is they have a chance every single tick of damage that they take to be staggered. So you have the stagger, you have the damage, you have your shield restore off of all of that as well. So that's definitely going to help you and your survivability. And keep in mind that if you have overshields up on this, so combine this with shield pillage, you'll actually deal more damage as well. Just be aware that this does drain your shields. So make sure that you know you're around as many enemies as you are allies so that it's not going to be too big a drain on you, or make sure that you're using shield pillage to help keep everything in the positives. Now, the last one we have is Aegis Storm. Now, Aegis Storm basically sends you up and hovering in the air, and what ends up happening with this is you're going to deal damage to enemies, but you're also going to lift them off of the ground, kind of restricting their movements. Now, every so often, you'll get ticks on these enemies, and they'll drop energy orbs, which is great because you can pick those up to restore some of your shielding. Which is another part of her passive that I failed to mention a little bit earlier, is that energy orbs restore her shields, which is very, very handy. Just keep in mind that one of the things that you need for this is a lot of people will use Aviator in their builds, and Aviator only works if you actually force yourself to hover. Because if you're just like hovering slightly off of the ground, Aviator doesn't recognize that. You'll actually need to push up. And the way that I find this, because I have weird keybinds, is jump will push you up and crouch will bring you back down. Now, there is a limit to how far up you can go. If you go higher, the area of effect will actually narrow, and but you will deal more damage to the enemies below. And I believe, yeah, that's the only other thing that I want to mention with this is Balefire is the only weapon that works during this. Now, a part of me is like, DE, if you want to make this really usable, maybe let us use the rest of our weapons in on this too, because Balefire isn't the most powerful thing on Earth. Now, last little bit is when you toggle this off, or when you run out of shields, this will actually slam all of the enemies that are affected with it back into the ground. So once you do that, I highly suggest casting Shield Pillage, because as they're getting back up, that wave should clear and you should be able to restore your shields. Definitely handy. Alrighty, so if I'm going to be completely honest with you, when I first got my hands on Hildryn, my opinion on her was she worked. I felt very, like, uninspired and just very meh about Hildryn, but after I kind of investigated her mechanics and really started pushing her to do really, really difficult content, I was like, this is kind of interesting. It's kind of engaging. So she actually became one of the Warframes that I drug into arbitrations over and over and over again. And I was like, you know what? I'm kind of feeling this, because the thing is, while her survivability is on the very strong side, you still do have to work for it. So as you can see here, we've got 20 level 165 enemies. I've got a smattering of it. Crewmen, gunners, ancients, bombards, nullifiers, all the good stuff. And I wanted to go ahead and show you exactly how she fared when she's, you know, being played, period. So as you can see right here, we're going to go ahead and take out these nullifiers real quick because they do pose the biggest threat. But as we are going through, I'm making sure to refill my shields, and that is going to be a big thing for her. I really want to make sure that we are constantly tossing Haven back up, tossing her shield pillage on, because making sure that she restores her shields to full and also making sure that she's got over shields is very big to her survivability. Like we were saying before, she becomes immune to some very, very lethal types of damage, like the slash procs and the toxin damage, whenever her shields are in overshield mode. So I'm always very, very aware to make sure to keep her in her overshields mode and keep her, I guess you would say energy topped off, because as you guys know, her whole like skill base all runs off of her energy. But as you can see right here, I'm pretty much face tanking all of these level 165s with really no issue whatsoever. Like, her shield gating stops her from taking too much damage. Oops, see, and you can see I got that little slash proc on me right there, right? Got that little slash proc on me right there. But, oh, let's restore that. I was able to nullify that by using her shield pillage ability. So she's definitely fun. She's definitely very survivable. But you just have to make sure to keep on top of her shields being up and making sure that her overshields stay on. As you can see, that was pretty clean and easy. There weren't any moments there that were too scary, except for maybe that slash proc that I noticed. But that is basically the setup that I'm currently running. Very, very survivable. So let's go ahead and take a look at the build and also go over some of the variants of this build, because it's not one-faceted. You can actually do a couple of different things with this. All right? So straight out of the gate, we have her survivability mods, which are redirection and adaptation. Oh my god, why can't I speak? Adaptation. Embarrassing. We're going to pretend that that didn't happen. But redirection and adaptation are definitely the two big ones you want, because as you can see right here, adaptation gives her damage resistance, which also applies to her shields. So because she's got such a big shield pool, and because of the fact that she can restore her shields pretty much at whim, adaptation will actually go ahead and make sure that she keeps her resistances up as she's replenishing all of that shielding. So she gets all of that damage reduction with there. I've actually tossed on fast deflection. Now, if I'm going to be honest with you, this is one of the optional mods. I don't feel like you absolutely need this. Of course, we've got some efficiency to go in there, prime continuity, because of the fact that Haven and her, what is it called? Haven and her ultimate ability, which I never use, Aegis Storm, all rely off of shield draining. So that's draining, and duration actually helps with that drain. We've got two instances of range extending, and then we've got some power strength in there to help her restore her shields. We also have a cunning drift in there for more range, but we'll talk about that in a second. Now, some people are going to be like, why are you using corrosive projection? Like, you need to make sure to have enemies keep their armor so that when you use your shield pillage ability, you'll still have some armors to like take off of. Listen, chill the fuck out. You really don't need to worry about that, because at higher levels, when you have corrosive projection in there, the enemies are going to have so much armor that it's not even going to be an issue. But if you do take issue with that, you can find a different aura to use, whatever the fuck you feel like putting in. Now, let's talk about the ones that are actually, what do you call this? Are, how do I put this? Are optional. So fast deflection, shield recharge. Like we were talking about when it came to the passive, if you can get your shields fully back online, you'll get another 3 seconds of invulnerability. That's what I'm playing around with fast deflection. As compared to some of the other options, I kind of feel wishy-washy about them all. So instead of fast deflection, one of the things that I actually had a lot of fun using was rolling guard. So for those of you guys who've never seen this before, this is on dodge, become invulnerable for 3 seconds, and remove all status effects. So it's basically like the status effect removal of shield pillage, except you can just use your dash. And to be completely honest with her, her dash is really fucking cool, so you're probably going to be using it, and you'll be able to say, oh, there's a bunch of enemies there, well, I'm scared of losing all of my shields, so you can just dash into them, and you'll get that 3 second invulnerability. You'll be able to kill all of those enemies, and you have that on a pretty short cooldown, which is only 7 seconds. So you can choose between fast deflection or rolling guard. Those definitely work. And then another one that I would suggest, which is what you saw in my original build, which was primed vigor. So Prime Vigor will actually boost her shield and health up a little bit, so you'll get a little bit more leeway when it comes to maybe spotting a slash proc that you're afraid of, and you'll get a little bit more buffer when it comes to her shields. Completely up to you if you want to use that. Really, to be honest, I don't feel like one way or another. If somebody said, you can't use Prime Vigor, or somebody said, you can't use Shield Recharge, or the Shield Recharge one, I really wouldn't be like that flustered. I'd be like, whatever, I'll just swap it off for the other one, and it feels fine as well. So that's my personal stance on them. You can totally go ahead and swap out whatever you feel like swapping out. It doesn't really matter to me whatsoever. Then let's go ahead and let's put that shield stuff back on, because it's gonna bother me if I don't have it on. Fast deflection, there you go. The next thing that I want to point out here, as you guys can see, I've actually modded out the D polarity here. I know we like to keep the D running strong, but one of the reasons I did that was because the D polarity is usually used for Aviator, right? So why is it, let's do this, Aviator, because that gives you 40% damage reduction while airborne. Now, here is the key. Like I was saying when we were talking about Aegis Storm. All right? With Aegis Storm, you can't just turn it on and then you get the benefits of Aviator. You actually have to manually maneuver yourself upwards. I went ahead and tested this several times, and you actually have to be off the ground a little bit to get the benefits of it. But if you just turn it on, it doesn't do anything. Now, if I'm going to be honest with you, when I use Aegis Storm, I usually don't hover very high off of the ground. I usually don't even hover at all. I just usually turn it on, CC whatever I've got to CC, turn on Balefire, and then just nuke some enemies, you know, take out anything that's of priority that I think is of priority, then come back down. So Aviator really didn't help me at all with that, but if you are the kind of person who likes to fly high in the sky, you know, do all of that kind of stuff, then Aviator will work for you. So I decided to mod it out and toss on Cunning Drift. Another one that I'm considering putting on instead is Power Drift, so that I can get more of my shielding back when I use the Pillage. And it also gives you some knockdown resist. So that's definitely one of the things that I wanted to go ahead and check out. But right now, Cunning Drift feels kind of right up my alley. Now let's address a couple things here for those of you guys who are curious. Rage does not work on this. So Rage and Quick Thinking, no-go. They all deal directly with energy. Now, I know that there are some people that are out there that's saying, oh, well, you know, when you pick up energy orbs, it grants you shields back. It does not work that way for Rage or Quick Thinking whatsoever. Same thing goes for the Augur sets. So definitely keep that in mind. Remember, it has to do with 40% of energy spent on abilities is converted on shields. It does not register your shield consumption as energy, so you won't get any benefits of that whatsoever. Now, the last thing that I did want to mention are the arcanes that we've got on here are Arcane Barrier and Arcane Aegis. So as you can see, Arcane Barrier has a 4% chance to instantly restore all shields. And then we've got Arcane Aegis, which is a 6% chance for 60 shields per second for 20 seconds. I'm considering just doing double barrier, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. But I'm waiting for, you know, Prime Access to have the lucrative funds to be able to just pick up one of those sets. But I'm actually having a lot of success with Aegis and Barrier, so if I don't feel like spending the plat, this completely and utterly works for me. So those are my suggestions for the build. I'm very, very happy with it. Like I said, I've been using her a ton when it comes to arbitrations. I've been having a lot of fun with that. The only thing that I really need to remind you is make sure that you are keeping on top of her shielding. Because if you're not keeping on top of her shielding, then she is going to die. And I like the fact that you have to be aware of these things. It really forces you to be engaged with your survivability. There are a couple frames out there where you just have to like watch for timers or just make sure to refresh a couple things here and there. This really makes you look, do I have overshields? Do I have a status effect on? Like what is the status of my Haven? Because that's the thing. Sometimes your shield will drop off completely and your Haven will tick and then it won't have any tick, so it'll actually turn itself off. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But the thing that I love about this too, oh no! Will I die? Will I die? Will I die? Will I die? Shield Pillage. Oh, by the way, I don't think I mentioned it, but you can automatically recast Shield Pillage if to pull all of it back to you. And you also can't use Shield Pillage while you're in Age of Storm, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is, okay? So just keep that in mind. Ah, no! Am I gonna die? Am I gonna die? Don't die, don't die, don't die, don't die. Automatically refill. There you go. See, as you can see right there, as long as you're on top of it, as long as you're on top of things, you will be fine and dandy. And that's really what I like about Hildryn, is her survivability is one of those things that you pay attention to. And then you're fine and dandy. The only thing I will say too is I love the way that the Melee 3.0, well 2. Whatever, auto parry works well with this, because you get the adaptation damage reduction, and then you get the blocking from the weapons that are automatic, and I'm just like, oh, Hildy, just being able to tank all of the things. So that is kind of like my stance on Hildryn right now. If I have any... Where you at? I saw you. If you have any remaining, like, if I were to have any remaining feedback on Hildryn, is number one, Balefire Charger kind of sucks. It's not that great, and it does not scale all that well. I mean, it does well against unarmored targets, because it's just a lot of damage. In fact, let's go ahead and take a look at my build for that, which might be completely and honestly wrong, because literally, I don't really use it. But this is what I've got set up for it. As you can see, it's got 60% status. I actually do like to kind of chug it out a little bit. I've got Magnum Force on there as well. The accuracy doesn't matter all that much to me. So this is what I've actually put together for that. Just at its base, you can see right here, it's only got 5% status chance, and let's see, 5% status chance and 50%, oh no, 5% critical chance, 1.5 times critical multiplier, and a 50 per, wait, no, hold on. I was like, that's still a lot. It's got a 10% status chance. So 5% critical chance, a 1.5 times critical multiplier, and a 10% status chance. So that's what that is. I mean, it hits hard just like for star chart enemies, and you shouldn't have any issues with that whatsoever. But when it comes to like armor targets, it's really not all that great. It kind of like reminds me of a Gimp Staticore, and it makes me sad. You know, I'm like, oh, Staticore's so fun. This is just meh. And because of the fact that it's the only weapon that you can use in your, what do you call this, Age of Storm, I'm a little bit underwhelmed with that. I would say either improve Balefire Charger's abilities, or I would say go ahead and give us the ability to use our weapons, our own weapons in whatever it's called, in Age of Storm. I think that's it. I'm not gonna die. I'm not gonna die. Ah, I'm just gonna get knocked around all the time. Am I gonna die? Ah, I'm dead. That's what happens when your shields don't recharge from the passive. So I'm gonna leave it here. I hope you guys enjoyed me getting launched into space there, where we were getting a little CC crazy. But that about does it for me for now. Let me know if there's anything that I might have missed. I hope not. Let's just be honest with you. I read her passive, and I was trying to get all of the information out as I possibly could, but there's just a lot of things to remember when it comes to like the sub mechanics. Regardless, I've had a lot of fun with Hildryn, and leave your opinions on Hildryn down below if you've been playing with her, and what else you've been using her for. And for me, to be honest with you, I use her for Grineer and Corpus. I just ignore it when it comes to Infested. I think she does fine against Grineer as well. But anyway, I'll see you guys next time. So as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I was gonna say I'll see you guys next time, but I already said that. Bye-bye!